What if the spiritual practices you think are transforming you are actually keeping you trapped in the very patterns they claim to transcend? We've been exploring the depths of Gurdjieff's cosmic masterpiece, Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson. Today we encounter some of the most challenging revelations about human spiritual development. Chapters 16 through 18 expose how even our highest aspirations can sometimes become a source of delusion when we misunderstand the fundamental principles of conscious transformation. I'm Mark Roach. Welcome to Transcendent. Well, the 16th teaching, the corruption of true spiritual practice. Now, chapter 16 takes us deep into one of the most profound spiritual teachings ever given to humanity. Buddha's method for overcoming the crystallized consequences of the kunda buffer organ. This teaching was designed to help humans break free from the automatic patterns that keep us trapped in unconscious reactivity and psychological suffering. Buddha's prescription was elegantly simple, yet revolutionary. Intentional suffering through the conscious endurance of unpleasant manifestations in others. This doesn't mean masochism or passive acceptance of abuse. It means staying present and conscious when other people trigger your automatic emotional reactions, rather than immediately withdrawing, attacking, or numbing yourself. Think about what this means in practical terms. When someone criticizes you unfairly, instead of immediately defending yourself or counterattacking, you remain present with the discomfort of being misunderstood. When someone behaves in ways that irritate you, instead of judging them or trying to change them, you stay conscious of your own reactivity without being controlled by it. The genius of this practice is that it works directly with the psychological mechanisms that maintain unconsciousness. Every time you endure an unpleasant manifestation consciously, you prevent the automatic crystallization of negative patterns. You create space between stimulus and response where genuine choice becomes possible. But here's where humanity made a catastrophic error. Instead of practicing this teaching in the midst of normal social interaction, where real transformation could occur, people withdrew into monasteries and hermitages. They created artificial conditions of suffering through extreme aesthetic practices, completely missing the point of the original teaching. The tragedy is profound. Buddha's teaching was specifically designed to work with the natural friction of human relationships, the irritations, conflicts, and challenges that arise when people live and work together and provide perfect conditions for conscious development. But humans preferred the comfort of isolation to the difficulty of staying conscious in relationships. Modern spiritual culture makes this same mistake constantly. People retreat to meditation centers, therapy, ashrams, counseling sessions, spiritual communities, where they can practice being peaceful without challenging or the challenge of dealing with consequences and with real difficult people. They create bubble environments that protect them from the very conditions necessary for real transformation. Social media amplifies this problem exponentially. When someone posts something that triggers your reactivity, instead of using it as an opportunity for unconscious development or for conscious development, you block them, you unfriend them, or retreat into an echo chamber of like-minded people. You end up robbing yourself of the precise conditions necessary for breaking free from automatic patterns. The intentional suffering that Buddha prescribed isn't about seeking out abuse or remaining in genuinely harmful situations. It's about developing the inner strength to maintain or remain conscious and present when life naturally provides friction and challenge. It's about transforming your relationship to discomfort so that it becomes a teacher rather than an enemy. Now, the 17th teaching is how sacred truth becomes spiritual comedy. Chapter 17 reveals one of the most heartbreaking patterns in human spiritual development, how the most profound teachings inevitably become distorted beyond recognition as they pass from generation to generation. This isn't accidental corruption. It's the inevitable result of how human psychology processes sacred knowledge. Buddha taught that each person must work consciously to develop what he called the divine particle within themselves. This required sustained effort, sustained attention, and the kind of intentional suffering we discussed in the previous chapter. The divine essence isn't something you possess automatically. It's something you must cultivate through conscious work. But within just a few generations, this teaching became completely inverted. People began to believe that the divine substance was present at birth, requiring no conscious individual effort whatsoever. This allowed them to imagine themselves spiritually complete, regardless of actual work or inner development. Beelzebub describes how he himself contributed to this distortion when he tried to end animal sacrifice by spreading the idea that all beings contain sacred essence. His intention was compassionate, but the result was spiritual comedy. People began walking on stilts to avoid stepping on insects, wearing veils to prevent inhaling tiny beings, and creating elaborate rules that had nothing to do with genuine spiritual development. This pattern repeats constantly in modern spiritual culture. Original teachings that require difficult inner work get transformed into comfortable beliefs that require no effort. The hard path of conscious development becomes the easy path of spiritual identity. Consider how mindfulness meditation has become packaged and sold in contemporary culture. The original teaching requires sustained attention, acceptance of discomfort, and the gradual dissolution of ego identification. The popularized version promises stress reduction, enhanced performance, and more relaxed lifestyle. The transformative challenge becomes a wellness technique. The same distortion affects every authentic spiritual teaching. Non-dual awareness becomes positive thinking. Surrender becomes manifestation. Self-inquiry becomes self-improvement. Compassion becomes niceness. The fire of transformation becomes the comfort of belonging to a spiritual community. This happens because humans prefer what Chogyam Trungpa called spiritual materialism, using spiritual concepts to reinforce rather than dissolve ego patterns. We collect teachings, practices, and experiences as trophies that prove our spiritual advancement rather than as tools for genuine transformation. The warning in this chapter is clear. Beware of any spiritual approach that makes you feel special, chosen, or superior to others. Beware of any teaching that promises results without sustained effort. Beware of any practice that allows you to avoid rather than engage with the difficulties of human existence. Real spiritual development is measured not by how peaceful you feel in meditation, but by how conscious you remain when someone pushes your buttons, not by how much you know about spiritual concepts, but by how present you are with ordinary life, not by how enlightened you consider yourself, but by how genuinely you can meet whatever life presents. Now, the 18th teaching It's called The Madness of Spiritual Sectarianism. Chapter 18 takes us into the heart of spiritual sectarianism through Beelzebub's journey across early Tibet. Here he encounters communities of self-tamers who have transformed Buddha's original teachings into increasingly extreme forms of ascetic suffering, including literal self-immurement in cells until death. What makes this chapter particularly disturbing is the way it demonstrates how spiritual communities split into competing factions, each claiming exclusive access to the truth. The wives in the community reject the harsh purification techniques, creating schisms that divides the group into moderate and extreme factions. Both sides believe they're following the authentic teaching. This sectarian splitting reveals several crucial psychological mechanisms. When spiritual groups become isolated from ordinary life, they often develop increasingly rigid and extreme interpretations of the original teaching. Competition emerges between different approaches, with each group claiming superior understanding. The focus shifts from genuine inner development to proving the correctness of particular methods or beliefs. The result is what Gurdjieff calls wise acquering, the transformation of living teaching into dogma and mystery beyond rational comprehension. Complex theoretical systems develop that have little relationship to practical transformation. Spiritual energy gets channeled into defending positions rather than doing the real work of conscious development. Modern spiritual culture is fragmented by exactly these patterns. Different meditation traditions compete for students. Various therapy approaches claim superior effectiveness. Spiritual teachers establish followings based on exclusive access to special knowledge or techniques. The focus becomes identifying with the right approach rather than doing the actual work of awakening. Social media amplifies sectarian thinking exponentially. Spiritual communities form around shared beliefs and practices, often defining themselves in opposition to other approaches. People signal their spiritual sophistication by criticizing less evolved methods of teachers. The marketplace of spiritual ideas becomes a battlefield of competing egos. But the most profound revelation in this chapter is the connection between inner and outer disharmony. Beelzebub observes dramatic environmental changes linked to human spiritual confusion, the elevation of the Tibetan plateau, the drying of rivers, and other ecological disruptions follow patterns of human misunderstanding and discord. This suggests that our collective spiritual confusion has real consequences for the planetary environment. When large numbers of people live unconsciously, pursuing spiritual practices that increase rather than decrease ego identification, the resulting psychic discord manifests as environmental disruption. Climate change, ecological destruction, and environmental instability might just not be the result of industrial pollution and resource extraction. They might also reflect the psychic pollution created by billions of people living unconsciously, pursuing spiritual materialism rather than genuine transformation. Now, to bring it all together, the spiritual crisis of our time. These three chapters provide a comprehensive analysis of how authentic spiritual teaching becomes corrupted in human hands. Chapter 16 shows how engagement with life becomes, with life become methods of withdrawal from life. Chapter 17 reveals how teachings require conscious effort become beliefs requiring no effort. Chapter 18 demonstrates how spiritual communities fragment into competing sects that have lost connection to the original purpose. Together, these three chapters, they diagnose the spiritual crisis of our contemporary moment. We live in a time when spiritual knowledge is more available than ever before, yet genuine transformation seems increasingly rare. Ancient wisdom traditions have been packaged and marketed as lifestyles enhancement rather than radical transformation. Meditation apps promise stress reduction rather than ego dissolution. Spiritual communities often reinforce rather than challenge the very patterns they claim to transcend. The solution isn't to abandon spiritual practice, but to recover its authentic purpose. Real spiritual development requires engaging with rather than withdrawing from the difficulties of human existence. It demands sustained conscious effort rather than comfortable beliefs. It necessitates working with others rather than retreating into isolation or competing with other approaches. Most importantly, authentic spiritual practice must serve the larger purpose of conscious evolution rather than personal enhancement. The goal isn't to feel better about yourself or to acquire special experiences. The goal is to develop the capacity for genuine presence and conscious participation in whatever life presents you. This requires what Buddha originally taught, intentional suffering through conscious engagement with the unpleasant manifestations that life naturally provides. Not seeking out problems, but remaining present and conscious when problems arise. Not avoiding conflict, but meeting conflict with awareness rather than automatic reactivity. It means recognizing that your spiritual development can't be separated from how you treat difficult people, how you respond to criticism, how you handle disappointment, and how you meet the ordinary challenges of daily existence. Your capacity for presence in meditation matters less than your capacity for presence when someone cuts you off in traffic or disagrees with your political opinions. The environmental crisis reflects our spiritual crisis. We won't solve ecological problems through technological fixes alone if the underlying consciousness remains unconscious. We need large numbers of people doing the real work of conscious development, staying present with discomfort, engaging skillfully with conflict, and gradually dissolving the ego patterns that create separation and competition. This isn't about becoming a better person or achieving enlightenment. It's about participating consciously in the larger evolutionary process that's trying to emerge through human consciousness. Your individual awakening serves the awakening of the whole. Your capacity to remain present with difficulty creates space for others to do the same. The question isn't whether you have access to spiritual teachings or practices. The question is whether you're willing to use them for genuine transformation rather than comfortable self-improvement. Are you ready to engage with rather than withdrawing from the friction of human existence? Are you prepared to do the sustained work that authentic development requires? The future of human consciousness and possibly the planet itself depend on enough people choosing to engage in the difficult path of genuine spiritual development versus an easy path of spiritual materialism. The choice is individual, but the consequences are collective. I'm Mark Roach, wishing you all the best.